Welcome in, everybody. We're diving deep today into Elder Uchtdorf's recent General Conference talk, God Among Us.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, the title itself, kind of grabbed me.
Yeah.
Just that simple phrase.
Right.
But it gets to the core of some pretty big questions.
Absolutely.
Where is God in all this?
Yeah, and especially when life feels kind of chaotic or uncertain.
Exactly. And Elder Uchtdorf approaches this question in such a personal way right off the bat.
Right.
He starts by taking us back to his childhood during World War II,
Oh, wow.
a time of incredible upheaval and fear.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine being forced to flee your home twice
Oh, gosh.
before you even turn 12?
It's hard to even fathom.
I know. It's just incredible.
It really is.
And I think that's what makes his recollections so powerful.
Absolutely.
He paints like a vivid picture of the anxieties of that time.
Right.
You know how his parents trying to shield their children from the worst of it?
Yeah, to protect.
But amidst all that darkness, he remembers the American missionaries who came to their town.
Mm-hmm.
He calls them angels of light and glory.
Wow.
Such a striking image.
Yeah.
What I found interesting is it wasn't just their message of faith that impacted him, but their actions.
Yeah, their selflessness. I mean,
Right.
their willingness to serve others, even in the midst of, such global turmoil,
Yeah.
really stood out to him.
Yeah.
Such a stark contrast to the cynicism and bitterness that many felt
Mm-hmm.
in the post-war world.
Right. And that experience seems to have had a profound impact on his faith.
Well, for sure.
He talks about how those missionaries planted the seeds of belief,
Right.
showing him that even in the darkest of times,
Yeah.
God's love could shine through.
It's like they embodied that message of God among us
Yeah.
through their actions, even before he fully understood, the
Right.
theological implications.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
And it seems to tie directly into his core message in this talk. This idea that God isn't some distant, detached being,
Mm-hmm.
but is actively involved in our lives.
He goes beyond just saying God is there.
Exactly.
He emphasizes that God is actively guiding us,
Okay.
caring for us, and working in our lives,
Yeah.
even when we might not recognize it.
So let's unpack that a bit.
Okay.
What are some of the ways he suggests we see God's hands in our lives?
Well, he talks about the continuation of God's communication through prophets,
Okay.
referencing President Nelson's recent address as a modern-day example.
Mm-hmm.
For someone maybe not as familiar with LDS beliefs,
Yeah.
it might be helpful to think of it as seeking wise counsel and guidance
Right.
from those we trust.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing sources of inspiration in our lives.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And he also talks about the plan of salvation, right?
Right.
That God has this incredible plan for our eternal progression and happiness.
Yes. And I think it's worth explaining that concept a little more
Okay.
for those who might not be familiar with it in LDS theology. Exaltation isn't just about going to heaven.
Right.
It's about the incredible potential we have to grow and develop,
Yeah.
to become more like God through a process of eternal learning and refinement.
Wow.
It's a pretty amazing concept when you think about it.
It is. It's like saying our potential is limitless,
Hmm.
that we're not just stuck in our current state,
Right.
but can continue to grow and evolve for eternity.
Precisely. And part of that growth involves recognizing our imperfections, which Elder Uchtdorf addresses beautifully with the analogy of a musician practicing scales.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
He basically says that those mistakes, those moments when we stumble,
Yeah.
aren't disqualifications,
Mhm.
but rather essential parts of the learning process.
He even quotes a proverb saying, "For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again."
Oh, wow.
He's reminding us that setbacks and imperfections
Right.
are not the end of the story.
It's so freeing, isn't it?
It is.
This idea that discipleship isn't about being perfect,
Right.
but about continually striving,
Mm.
learning and growing.
Yeah.
And that even when we mess up,
Yeah,
God is there to help us get back up and keep going.
absolutely.
It shifts our perspective from shame to hope,
Mm.
reminding us that we're all works in progress,
Right.
constantly being refined and shaped by our experiences.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting to me.
Okay.
Building on this idea of God's active role and our own imperfections,
Mm-hmm.
Elder Uchtdorf then asks this incredibly thought-provoking question.
Okay.
What if Jesus visited us today?
Mm.
This is where he really challenges us to look beyond the superficial,
Okay.
both in ourselves and in others.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
What if Jesus were to walk into our lives today?
Yeah.
What would he see?
Right.
What would he focus on?
Elder Uchtdorf suggests that outward appearances would fade away
Okay.
in Christ's presence.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be about our clothes,
Right.
our social status, or any of the superficial things we often get caught up in.
It's like he'd see right through all of that,
Mm.
to the core of who we are,
Exactly.
our true hearts and desires.
The things that really matter.
Right, and he'd see those who are humble and meek,
Yeah.
those who are struggling and in need of healing,
Right.
and those who are yearning for faith and courage.
He paints such a beautiful picture of Christ offering upliftment and hope
Yeah.
to those who need it most.
It's a powerful reminder that God's love is not conditional.
Right.
It's not based on our achievements or outward appearances.
It's freely given to all,
right.
regardless of where we are in our journey.
I love that.
Yeah.
It really challenges us to rethink how we interact with others, doesn't it?
It does.
Do we see past the superficial?
Mm-hmm.
Do we recognize the divine spark
Right.
within everyone we meet,
Yeah.
even those who might seem different from us?
It's a call to cultivate empathy and compassion, to see the world through a lens of love and understanding.
And this leads to another fascinating aspect of his talk,
Okay.
where he connects this vision of Christ's presence
Yeah.
to the core teachings found in both the Book of Mormon and the modern restoration of the gospel.
What's striking is how he highlights the consistency of Jesus' message
Right.
across time and cultures,
Yeah.
whether it's ancient America, 19th century New York, or our lives today.
Mm-hmm.
Those core principles, love,
Yeah.
service, seeking God,
Right.
sharing the gospel, remain central.
It's like they form a bridge across centuries,
Yeah.
connecting people from vastly different backgrounds
It does.
through shared values and aspirations.
It's a beautiful reminder that despite our differences,
Mhm.
we're all united by our capacity for love,
Yeah.
service, and faith.
Right.
These are universal principles that resonate with the human heart,
Yeah.
regardless of background or belief system.
And it's not just about passively believing in these principles, is it?
No, it's not.
Elder Uchtdorf calls us to action.
He does.
He urges us to actively seek God,
Right.
to follow Christ's example, and to diligently practice discipleship in our daily lives.
It's about taking those principles and weaving them into the very fabric of our lives.
Okay.
It's about actively striving to live a life that reflects those values, to make them more than just words,
Yeah.
but lived experiences.
And he assures us that this path, this
Yeah.
commitment to living a Christ-centered life,
Yeah.
leads to a fullness of joy
Mm-hmm.
and the realization that God is among us.
Yeah.
But he doesn't just leave it at that, does he?
No, he doesn't.
He takes it a step further and asks us to consider what it would look like
Right.
and invite Christ into our lives more fully right here, right now.
He really pushes us to go beyond just intellectual understanding
Yeah.
and step into a realm of lived experience.
It's so powerful.
It is.
If we truly embodied these principles of love, service, and faith,
Right.
how would that transform our relationships? Yeah.
Our communities.
Our very sense of self.
It's such a powerful question.
It is.
It makes you stop and think,
Right.
what would my life look like if I fully embrace these principles today?
Yeah. How would it change my perspective on the challenges I face
Mm-hmm.
and the opportunities that surround me?
It reminds me of that quote by Elder Uchtdorf,
Okay.
where he says, doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's encouraging us to lean into faith,
Yeah.
to trust in God's plan, and to allow ourselves to experience the transformative power of his love.
Or to recognize that even in the midst of our doubts and imperfections,
Yeah.
God is still there,
Right.
patiently working with us,
Yeah.
guiding us,
Mm-hmm.
and helping us discover our true potential.
It all circles back to that central message. God is among us,
Absolutely.
not as a distant observer,
Right?
but as an active participant in our lives.
He's there to guide us,
Yeah.
to comfort us,
Mm-hmm.
to challenge us, and ultimately to help us experience the fullness of joy.
That comes from aligning our lives with his teachings.
It's amazing how Elder Uchtdorf manages to take these profound theological concepts and make them feel so personal and relatable.
That's one of the things I appreciate most about his talks. He speaks from the heart, sharing his own experiences and insights in a way that invites us to reflect on our own lives.
And speaking of personal experience,
Yeah.
His own life really exemplifies the message he shares.
It really does.
From a childhood marked by uncertainty and fear.
Right.
He emerged with this unshakable faith and a deep commitment to serving others.
It's like he embodies that idea of finding hope even in the midst of trials, of allowing those experiences to refine and shape him rather than define him.
And it culminates in that powerful statement, God is among us.
Yeah.
It's not just a passive belief for him, is it?
No, not at all.
It's a call to action,
Right.
an invitation to experience the divine in a tangible, personal way.
He's urging us to open our hearts to God's presence, to seek his guidance in our lives, and to allow his love to transform us from the inside out.
As we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I keep coming back to that challenge he poses. What would it look like for us to invite Christ into our lives more fully right now, today?
It's such a powerful question, isn't it?
It is.
It's not about waiting for some future event
Right.
or achieving some level of perfection.
Yeah.
It's about making a conscious choice here and now
Okay.
to align our lives with Christ's teachings.
How would that change the way we approach our relationships,
Yeah.
our work, our communities?
A very sense of self. It's about looking for opportunities to serve,
Okay.
to show compassion, to forgive, to extend grace to ourselves and others.
Right.
It's about letting those principles guide our decisions
Yeah.
and shape our interactions with the world around us.
You know, it makes me think about those God among us moments that we sometimes hear about, those everyday miracles, those acts of kindness and compassion.
There's moments of serendipity that feel like more than just coincidence.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those moments, not dismissing them as chance occurrences, but seeing them as evidence of God's hand in our lives, as reminders that we're not alone on this journey.
So as we finish up, I want to leave our listeners with this final thought.
Right.
What if we started looking for those God among us moments in our own lives?
Yeah, what if we made a conscious effort to invite Christ into our everyday experiences?
How might that shift in perspective open us up to new possibilities?
Right.
New experiences of joy and a deeper understanding of God's love.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Elder Uchtdorf's God Among Us.
Yeah, this was great.
We hope it's given you some food for thought and maybe even sparked a desire to seek a little more of the divine in your own life.
Absolutely.
Keep growing and keep believing that God is indeed among us.
Waiting to be discovered. It's interesting, thinking about those God among us moments.
Yeah.
Because it really brings to mind that he's not this, distant figure.
Right.
He's actively involved
He's here.
in our lives.
And now.
Yeah, in the everyday.
I love how Elder Uchtdorf uses his own experiences to, kind of illustrate these points.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so relatable.
Yeah, it makes it real for people.
It does.
Like, it's not just this theoretical idea. It's like, no, this is something I've lived.
Exactly.
That you can experience too.
He's lived it, and he's inviting us
Right.
to have that same experience.
So powerful.
It is.
I think that's a great place to wrap up.
Yeah, this has been a really fascinating discussion.
It has.
I love you just diving into these ideas.
Me too.
And really unpacking what it means to have God among us.
Not just, up there somewhere.
Exactly.
But right here with us.
Yeah, in the everyday moment.
In the thick of things. And, I hope that our listeners will really take that to heart.
Yeah. I hope they'll leave feeling inspired.
Yeah.
To maybe look for those God among us moments in their own lives.
To recognize those little miracles, those little moments of grace.
Those little nudges and promptings.
Yeah. Just to be a little more aware.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to really open their hearts to the possibility that God is right there with them.
All the time.
Through it all.
Every step of the way.
So thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks for being here.
On this deep dive into Elder Uchtdorf's God Among Us.
I hope you enjoyed it.
And we'll see you next time.
Take care.